Hey, what's up everybody? Back again with another video from the Tata Steel 2021 chess tournament round number 10. Here's the second decisive game of the day. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who has been having a rather tough tournament, is playing with the white pieces versus the young, impressive teenager Alexander Donchenko, Germany's #1 player. So we are going to get right into it. Again, please like, subscribe, all that stuff. Check the links below. Also, if you know who this female player is above me, be the first to shout it out, and I'll be glad to shout you out on the next chess video. And that's a pretty easy one too. So let's get right into it. So Maxime, coming off a loss against Anish Giri last round, starts out with e4. Donchenko, Carol Khan, c6, d4. Those of you who are not familiar with Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's play, he is a noted Carol specialist from the white side, notably the advanced variation. So d5 is played, and we see f3. Now, this has a funny name to it. I know, I think it was called the fantasy variation at one point. I'm not sure what it's called now, but I do remember being called that for some odd reason. F3 here. E6 by Donchenko. Knight C3. Bishop B4. Bishop D2. And knight E7 here. Knight F6 can provoke E5. And black might end up in some inferior French defense lines going into this move order. So knight e7 seems more prudent, which is what Donchenko played. Bishop d3 from Lagrave, just simply developing. And now b6. It seems a little bit slow. C5 can be played right away here, but I see Donchenko's idea here, and it's a good plan. And the idea is to play c5, of course, and now with b6, if the c pawn is taken, he can replace the c pawn with this b pawn and still have that same influence in the center. Also allows the bishop to come out to a6, right? And if you notice, I have the yellow, the squares highlighted in yellow. That's because the bishop is blocked behind those squares, and this is why that bishop is notoriously considered a bad bishop in these French defense type structures. And so part of Donchenko's plan is with b6 is also to free that bishop and possibly trade it off for white's light square bishop. a3, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, castles f4, and now the war is on. So basically white just wants to blow black off the board with the king side attack. E4, e5, f4, f5, f6 in some cases. All right, and black must get to work immediately on his counter play. So c5, d takes c5 from Lagrave, b takes c5, there it is, and now queen h5. So you can see already ideas of e takes d5 followed by checkmate. All right, so white is not playing, and white, of course, if given the chance, is gonna play these moves, and knight f3 and castle king side and knight g5 and so on. So the time is of the essence here, and as you can see, white has a space advantage on the king side, black space advantage on the queen side. So let's see whose play will dictate the course of this game. So bishop a6, following his plan from the black side, knight f3, and now you can see d4. So shutting down the scope of that bishop on c3, bishop d2, and c4. So black has the initiative here. Black has very powerful position, and is, for all intents and purposes, shut down white's potential kingside attack by being so quick to strike in the center of the board. right? And that's an old adage, right, that you counter a flank attack with the central attack. And you see that right here. Bishop a5, so of course white is trying to fight back and not just completely give up the initiative. But queen c8 is very powerful. Bishop on d3 still has to move. e2. And now knight b c6, just driving the white pieces back. Queen c5, d3, c takes d3, c takes d3, and white is already in serious trouble, if not almost lost in this position. Bishop d1, bishop comes off, queen takes a5, rook b8 hitting the b2 pawn, and now b3 from white. So I don't know how many UFC fans there are out there, or mixed martial arts fans out there, but if this was a mixed martial arts fight or the UFC, the ref will be considering stopping the fight. That's how bad it is looking for white in this position here. All right. So Donchenko, right, one punch away from the knockout blow. He plays a sensible move, which is rook d8, right? He takes a piece that is not in the game. He brings it in the game, right? Protects the pawn. So nothing wrong with this move. However, even stronger move is just bishop b7, hitting the e4 pawn, and there's no adequate way for white to protect this pawn. Let's look at it. If he does e5, right, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, and then he drops the b pawn. Say castle, queen d7, knight a5, and white is just busted here. Okay, there's no real good way to do it. Queen e5, and by knight g6, queen, right, the queen has to move, and something's got to give. Either the pawn on f4 is going to go, or the rook on a1 is going to go after queen c3 check, as illustrated here. So if queen a4, again trying to protect e4, then just simply queen to c3 check. So there's really no way out for white. His best is just to castle here and just give up the pawn, the e pawn for the a pawn. All right, and he's just black is just totally dominating this position, if not almost winning, like I said. So bishop b7 is definitely the way to go, and I'm sure Donchenko knows that. But rook d8 wasn't bad either. So castles happen, right? Natural move. And then d2. So here is where the young teenager Donchenko became a little bit too ambitious, right? Because now black can't protect this pawn. All right. Rook f2, and you can see the knight on f3 and the rook on f2 both attacking the pawn. So black goes into hyper dynamic mode, and he has a right to. Listen, all of his pieces are developed. White's pieces are very awkward. He has a pawn on the second rank, so he is basically giving that pawn up, or he's willing to give that pawn up in order to achieve dynamic play. So at this point, I'm sure Donchenko probably thought he was winning or close to winning. Queen a4, now knight g6 hitting the f pawn, g3, and now rook c5. So this is all obviously planned. Rook takes d2, rook takes d2, knight takes d2. So black loses the pawn, but you can see his pieces are well placed. However, black, in my opinion, black went from almost winning to just having compensation for the pawn. So does black have compensation? Yes, but he took a step back because he was almost winning. The game was almost over. All right, what is this compensation? Well, you can see the placement of black's pieces on the board. The compensation consists of that his activity, lead, and development. So therefore, white is going to try to neutralize all of this. Okay, and this explains the next couple of moves by Vasyl Lagrave. So after rook c1, rook takes c1 by Lagrave. Of course, he's happy to trade. All right, because this is one of black's main trumps, is the activity in the position. So this is right up Lagrav's alley. Queen takes a6, queen takes d1, and knight f1, of course, protecting the knight. And look, all of those pieces are gone, and you can see black is just down a pawn. Now the only trump that black has in this position is his activity, and the fact that due to the moves f4 and g3, white's king is exposed. So there you have it, queen d4 check, king g2, and now the material is equal, and black has exposed the white king a little further. However, two passed pawns, a passed pawn, 2-to-1 majority on the queen side for white can be very dangerous. All right. Nevertheless, with the exposed king that white has, it should probably be a draw at some point. But this is why we play the game. So king f2 happened, queen d4 check, king e2, and now h5. h5, of course, makes sense to make some luff for the king so the king doesn't get mated. Another good move was e5, with the idea of just opening up the position in the center since the king is there, and also allows the knight on g6 to get back into the game. So, for instance, play could go queen takes e5 check, king f2, queen b2, a little more harassment, queen d4, king g2, h6, and now with queen c8, the knight can always hop back, queen c2, and the knight comes back in, e6, and to g5, and you can see now the knight starts having a little fun and getting involved. All right. However, even though it's check, it doesn't mean the game is over, but that's another option. But h5 is understandable also, and a decent move. So queen c8, king scurries to h7, queen c2, queen d5, king f2, king g8, and now queen c8 check again, knight f8, queen c4, and now Maxime Vachier-Lagrave sensibly wants to trade queens because, again, his king is exposed and he has a 2-to-1 majority on the queen side. All right, so Donchenko says no, I'll keep my activity. He plays queen d6, attacking the a3 pawn. So it makes sense with the exposed king that favors black, so he opts to keep the queens on the board. If he played queen takes c4, it's good to know that this kind of general rule about knight endgames is that they're very similar to just king and pawn endgames. So, of course, this rule is not carved in stone. So, it's a general rule of thumb that you can attempt to follow. But when you get ready to go into these type of endings, if you don't feel like you can bring the king and pawn ending, maybe, or draw it, to hold it at least, maybe you should try to avoid it generally. Of course, you're going to have to do some concrete calculation. You can't be lazy. But remember that knight endgames are very similar to just king and pawn endgames. All right, so for instance, in this variation, queen takes c4, b takes, play is very similar, and black has to be careful due to the passed pawn here. This particular line I have, black is able to blockade, but still, these are the type of considerations that you must take into mind when going, trading off the queens and going into a pure knight ending. So here, I think Donchenko made a good decision. Right, he plays to his advantage, so he keeps the activity going. b4, pushing the pawns, knight d7, king e2, knight f6. And notice that even though white's king is exposed, with the fewer pieces on board, can't really make anything of it. Knight e3, and now queen d8, b5. Those pawns are getting more and more menacing. Queen f8, queen c3, queen d8, a4. Wow, it's getting scary for black. And Donchenko plays knight d5, which I believe is a mistake. This gives white a chance to get even closer to a simpler ending. Now, this is what Vachier-Lagrave wants. He wants a simple ending. not with queens on the board, right? Because if you take the queens off the board, his king is already in a good spot as it's close to the center. All right. So queen d4, and now Vasyl is able to exploit that. So he's either going to get a simple king and pawn ending right after everything is traded off, or he's going to get an ending with queens on the board, but an additional weakness from black, which is going to be the isolated pawn. So instead of knight d5, a better option is just like g6. Right, and play can go something along these lines. Okay, it's just a sample line there. So knight d5, queen d4, and now, of course, Donchenko doesn't want to trade queen, so he's got to accept this isolated pawn now. So that's why knight d5 was a little suspicious. Right, the king is exposed again, but now you have only one piece. And now that we're in the pure queen ending, let me just say the general principles for the queen and pawn ending are as follows. First of all, if you're on the defending side, your main defense, pretty much your only defense, is to go for some type of perpetual. It's very hard to stop past pawns, which white is about to make. Very hard to stop past pawns, and your only defense most of the times is just a perpetual, and you're gonna see how this plays out. Queen a3, queen d5, so the pawn just drops again, highlighting the fact that knight d5 was a mistake. Queen takes a4, queen takes h5, queen d4, and again you see this is what black is going for. Just, you know, continue checks. King g2, a6, and Donchenko has calculated all of this, of course, that he'll pick up that pawn. And now it looks like, again, it should maybe be a draw, right? It's 3-2, but everything's on the same side. But let's see how it played out. Queen f3, queen e6 check, g4, f5, g5, avoiding the trade of pawns. Now let me ask you the question: whose king is safer now? Okay. Now queen e1 is played, and to me this is the last mistake that black made. He has to play g6 because you can't have that much. You can't allow white to have that much space around your king. You have to play g6 here, because now when he played queen e1 here, Vasyl played g6, and now there's mating threats around the king, which is problematic. So now black can't even concentrate on going after perpetual because he has to watch the mate threats around this king. All right, so what he does is now Donchenko goes all the way back to guard the back rank. That's no good because that frees up white to go on an attack. And of course he plays queen d5, checking the queen and the pawn on f5 at the same time. So maybe instead of queen e8, king f8, getting out of the immediate mate, but white is still better here. The queen a3, king e8, but at least white has to be honest, and he can't just run around with the queen, because with the black king on e1, he might fall into a perpetual check situation. So I think king f8 was better than just bringing your queen just totally on the defensive with this move, queen e8. So queen d5 happened. And I want to say one more thing about this move g6. Interestingly enough, in the other video I did on the round 10 Tata Steel tournament, in the game between Anish Giri and Radoslav Wojtaszek, the same situation occurred, but instead of the move g6 being played, it was h6 being allowed by Wojtaszek, with the same kind of implications, right? Creating a mating net around the king. That's a very dangerous scenario to allow, is pawns on g6 and h6 around your king like this. All right, so check that video out if you haven't seen it yet after this one. Anyway, queen e8, queen d5, king h8, and now that pawn drops, and queen e3, queen h4, queen e1 check, and again the only defense black has is to try to find perpetual. Queen e2, queen g4, queen e6, and now we can see the pawns and the queen of Lagrave protecting his king. Queen e5, queen h3, queen f4, and then a move that surprised a lot of people watching the game earlier was just this move f6, after which Donchenko resigned. Why did he resign here? Because after f6, let's say queen h6, no defenses work. Notice that the black queen is pinned now, so he takes, and this is a simple king and pawn endgame. If you studied Capablanca's end games, there's a similar position in his book. Right here, this is a simple win for white here. If G takes f6 here, back rank is a problem, and you can see the power of the g6 pawn, and black would just get mated. And those are the reasons why Donchenko resigned. So good game, ups and downs. Good to see Maxime Vachier-Lagrave back on the right track, but at the same time, tragic loss for Donchenko, because like I said, he was like right there. He was so close to having another brutal knockout, victory over a top rated chess player. We all saw what he did to Magnus Carlsen, and he was on his way to doing the same thing to Vachier-Lagrave. But credit to Lagrave for just sticking it out and turning the position around and coming away with the win. So that'll do it for the video today. Like I said, please let me know who that player is, and I'll be glad to shout you out first thing next video. Also check the links below. Please donate to my channel, support, click all the thumbs up buttons, and like, subscribe. Chess Audiobooks is also on Instagram. Chess Audiobooks is also on chess.com. Chess Audiobooks is also on Live Chess. All right, and Chess Audiobooks is also on Twitter. So follow me and say what's up to me on all those platforms. I'll be glad to respond to each and every one of you, and let me know what you think of the content, and if there's any content that you're interested in that we could discuss going forward in the future. So with that, I want to say once again, thank you for joining me today on this broadcast. I'll see you on the next video.